Auburn finds themselves in a very interesting situation when it comes to the transfer portal quarterback market. Casey Thompson jumps in the portal from Nebraska. Hours later, sounds like he's taking a visit to Auburn, visited Auburn this past weekend. And so we're all kind of waiting with bated breath saying like, all right, is Casey Thompson going to commit to Auburn? Does Auburn have their guy? The week sort of wears on. And then yesterday, it really started to bubble up that Payton Thorne in Auburn had a lot of buzz around him potentially ending up being the transfer portal quarterback that Auburn likes. So the rumblings, and again, I want to be clear, these are rumblings. These are not facts being reported. The rumblings are that Auburn really likes Payton Thorne. The rumblings are that they prefer Payton Thorne. That's not confirmed. That's not a report. That's just the rumblings, okay? So with speculation here, we can kind of deduce why that might be. The first reason being he gives you 2 years, not one. So what does that mean? If Payton Thorne is your starting quarterback in 2023, he could also potentially, if he chooses to come back, be your starting quarterback in 2024. And it keeps you, if you're Auburn, from having to go back to the portal a second year. Keeps you from having to go back to the portal and do this whole song and dance a second time in a row. With Casey Thompson, he also has the issue of the shoulder surgery he's coming off of. So a guy who gives you 1 year, and a guy who, if he hits a snag in his health, let's say that shoulder surgery doesn't quite heal or progress the way that you would hope it does, well, then you took a shot on a transfer portal quarterback and you got nothing out of it. You're back to square one playing whoever you were eventually going to play, regardless if you missed on both these guys. So that's not ideal. I think that the intriguing thing about this is if Casey Thompson was Auburn's choice, would it not have already happened? Would it not have already been a thing where we know that Casey Thompson and Auburn are going to be a match? I'm not saying they won't eventually still take him, but the longer this thing wears on, the visit was this past weekend. Okay, it's Thursday now. We're almost into the next weekend. If it was a fit, if he was a take for Auburn, would they not already have pulled the trigger? Would both sides not have already pulled the trigger? I think that's intriguing. The smoke is that Payton Thorne has graduation this coming weekend at Michigan State, which is why there hasn't been any rumblings about him visiting just yet. Now, again, they're playing this very close to the vest. We're just kind of putting two and two together with Auburn having no decision right now when it comes to the transfer portal and a quarterback. And when you look at Michigan State's graduation dates and Payton Thorne being up for graduation. So that's how we see that right now. So what does Payton Thorne bring to the table? In my mind, brings a lot to the table. Talk about that in a second. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at JD Piquel. Listen, we got to do it. Okay, I understand you probably don't like that we plug the subscription thing a lot, but to be honest, it helps us do more of what you want to see. And so it's something that we thank you for in advance. All right, so we'll leave it at that. What does Payton Thorne bring to the table for Auburn? He brings experience and proven production. A 2-year starter who's thrown 49 touchdowns, over 6,000 yards, 60% completion percentage. Translation, with Payton Thorne, you know what you're getting. You're not guessing at what kind of player he is. He's got a 2-year resume for you. On top of that, he's a proven leader. Is a 2-year captain at Michigan State. So anytime you go to the portal and add anybody, much less a quarterback, the question is always there. Hey, what kind of character are we introducing to the locker room? What kind of person are we introducing to this locker room? Because the person aspect, I would argue, is just as important as the player aspect when you're dealing with team chemistry in a situation that's as fragile as Auburn is with so many transfers and being in the first year of a new staff. So Payton Thorne, who knows what happens if he goes to Auburn, but the people at Michigan State, man, they would follow him. He's a 2-year captain there. So I think that speaks volumes to the kind of addition he would be to that program. So I was talking to one of y'all via direct message on Twitter, and you posed a really good question around this quarterback situation. And the question was essentially, hey, why does it feel like we're just getting to pick here? This is an Auburn fan speaking. Why do we feel like we just get to kind of have our pick of Casey Thompson or Payton Thorne? There's other schools that need quarterbacks. Florida's been sprinkled into this conversation just a little bit here and there, but it really feels like Auburn gets to pick who they want here. Why is that? Well, the first is I think Auburn has the most appealing situation. The scheme is up-tempo, it's RPO, it's quarterback-friendly, which we'll talk about here later in the show what quarterback-friendly entails. It's the most ideal landing spot. Now, you would hope there's some receiver play that gets elevated, whether it's via the portal or whether it's guys stepping up that are already on the roster. But where else would you go that's as ideal as an Auburn with the scheme and then the staff that's in place as well that has a track record working with quarterbacks? Florida, I think, is a great option in terms of, probably the NIL availability there, the branding of being an SEC school, the potential to compete for a job. But Florida also already brought in a transfer quarterback in that first window. So, kind of take your pick there. You get to go to a place like Auburn, which has Hugh Freeze, Philip Montgomery, both strong track record working with quarterbacks. I think Auburn will get to pick here who they want. And so it's not a matter of Auburn is somehow, just the only spot, but I think they're the best spot. And that's why I think you're getting to have this conversation around Casey Thompson versus Payton Thorne. I think you get to pick which one. And to go on record here, I think Casey Thompson is more dynamic. So that's, for my money, why I would go with Casey Thompson. But for the reasons why Auburn, it sounds like, or you would imagine, is leaning towards Payton Thorne, I think that's totally fair. And so to predict what I think will happen, I think Auburn will actually end up getting Payton Thorne. I think he'll be your starting quarterback, and that's how I think this whole thing's going to go. The timeline, who knows, man? It's the transfer portal. The transfer portal doesn't care about anybody's feelings or anybody's agenda. So with that being said, I do think Auburn will actually end up going with Payton Thorne, and I think they will land him whenever that does happen. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.